today's chat with Charlotta from BLIXT, Adriano from SOLHO, and Daniel from Hydrogenious. And my name is Petra Sokolová. I am an investment manager with Inven Capital, a VC fund based in Prague, investing in Israeli and European startups which focus on CO2 footprint reduction. And it is my greatest pleasure to be here today and to have Charlotta, Adriano, and Daniel with me to share their stories, not only the business stories, but as well as the personal stories behind their startups. All these three people are SET award winners, and that's why they are here today with us. But before we jump into the discussion, let me tell you this. It is almost 4 years since I attended back in 2017 for the first time my SET festival. It was actually one of those events you never heard about before, and not sure what it is gonna be about. And to my greatest surprise, it was actually one of the best events for me of the year. And it was not really a conference, it was rather a festival. On one side, there were huge applauses given to great speakers, panel discussions, but on the other side, there were as well lots of startups, and the event really rocked. And that's why the next year I brought the whole Inven Capital team to the stage, and you might remember we performed our mantra there. We did some drumming as well, and the topic was the soul of the winner. And the next year we came again, and again we performed as the whole team on the stage, this time performing haka, and again the topic was the soul of the winner. All those years, we as well were part of SET jury. So we had the chance to evaluate 50 startups from more than 1,000 startups which applied for SET award. And all the time, we kept asking ourselves one question: what it is that makes one win succeed? What it is that makes one win succeed? That is actually a question we as VC investors keep asking every day. It keeps us busy every day. And it is actually as well the questions I'm going to ask today our panelists, Charlotta, Adriano, and Daniel. Let me first introduce all of them. So let's start with the woman. So hi, Charlotta.
Hi there.
Charlotta. Yeah, hi. Charlotta founded BLIXT back in, I guess, 2017 and 18. Okay, 18, and then won the SET award a year after. So could you please, Charlotta, tell us a few words about yourself and BLIXT?
Yeah, so Charlotta Holmquist, I'm from Sweden. Not the Swedish forest back in the background, but love nature. And started BLIXT together with 3 co-founders in 2018. And we had an extremely ambitious and still have a vision with BLIXT. So we would like to enable full software control and configuration of electricity. And to do the pitch in 10 seconds, those are traditional mechanical circuit breakers. It's unbelievable. We are in a world of digitization, and they are still mechanical devices controlling our power flow. So we thought it would be smarter to have a full solid state digital breaker that could measure data, control everything in real time, and really be a part of the future modern digital grid. Was that short enough?
That was short enough, and I think it really helped to understand what you're doing. So thanks, Charlotta, for this quick introduction. I would move then to Adriano. Hi, Adriano.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Okay, so could you please perhaps as well tell us a few words about yourself and the company?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm originally from Italy. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SOLHO. We started in 2017. We are based in Delft in the Netherlands. And our mission is to boost the transition towards sustainable food provision. What we do is that we develop solar-based energy system to power greenhouse farms. So we have an energy system that uses the sun as an input to generate all the energy streams required to operate a greenhouse farm. So heating, cooling, and electricity.
Okay, thank you, Adriano. Let's move to Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Hi there.
So Daniel started already 2014, right, with Hydrogenious?
Yeah, actually already in 2013. So I personally have a background in mechanical engineering. I was then working in automotive industry at BMW. And back then I started working on hydrogen. And that excited me so much that actually after 3 years there, I decided to not only make this my job at the corporate, but also to make this the basis of my own company. And that's when I founded Hydrogenious in 2014, together with 3 co-founders, 3 professors from the University of Erlangen here in Germany. And what we are focusing on is really the question, how can you make hydrogen available in a future hydrogen-based energy system? How can you store it? How can you transport it? How can you import it? And we have developed a technology where you can store hydrogen in a chemical way bound to a liquid carrier. And this liquid carrier you can transport and handle in today's existing infrastructure for liquid fuels, making it much easier and also safer to handle hydrogen than if you have molecular hydrogen in conventional form. That's in very short. Thanks for
amazing. Thanks, Daniel, for introduction. Thank you all. Let's move to our first question, and it is actually not going far from what we just heard, but it is a bit more personal. I would love if you could share with us your personal story, why you actually started what you're doing today. So for me, for instance, Charlotte, if I start with you, I am very honest with you. I do see hundreds of companies a year, and I rarely see a female founder in a company in the clean tech world. And when talking about circuit breakers, it is for me even more unbelievable there is a woman leading such a company. So is there anything you could tell us about why you ended up where you are?
Yeah, I would definitely say ended up, because one thing leads to another. And I've been entrepreneur for 20 years now. So it's I feel very old, but I started early on as well. And back then, I was always co-founder, either CEO or leading position. And early on, it was something new at the time. So I think I'm very, very curious as a person. And if it's a new field opening up, I would like to explore and see what you could do. So just when mobile content came and later on e-commerce, I actually did one thing in online gaming, in fintech. But then after a while, I gathered so much experience, because it's never ever a straight journey. It's more of a roller coaster journey. And I thought of all this experience, for me, after a while, it didn't make sense to not work with something that couldn't have a positive impact on the climate and do something more with a purpose. So about 10 years ago, I started to shifting more into energy efficiency technologies. So I did one startup which was for controlling heating in homes in a more efficient way. And during that journey, we wanted to think bigger. So it was me and my 3 co-founders. We got the idea of software in controlling electricity through the fuse box, through the entry point. And since that was not really the core of that startup, we decided to break free and just fully focus on this technology. And the more I work with it, I think it's more of an inspiration, because you get reach outs from not only buildings and home automation, but rather, electricity is everywhere and the need and use of it is just growing. So I think that constant journey of exploring, learning, and doing it together with people that are just complementing each other, because I'm not engineer, not the mechanical or electronic engineer, but I love to learn from those who can have that knowledge. And I'm more the entrepreneurial aspect to see how can we take this innovation to the market and what the structure for it. So just building a new company and a new business model is very, very inspiring.
Okay, thank you, Charlotta. Seems like you're a real serial entrepreneur, and that actually makes me think that you probably have not ended here forever, but that would be another discussion. Let us move to Daniel. Daniel, hydrogen, right? So hydrogen seems like a huge game changer. On the other hand, to me, it seems like when you decide to go this way, it's basically a lifelong project, right? So what is there for you which brought you to this adventure?
Yeah, I think it's really twofold, right? I think it's really the technological side, why, I mean, my interest for hydrogen is very big, but it's also, I mean, the entrepreneurial angle, right? And I mean, on the technology, I mean, I think you're fully right. It's really a long-term story to make this happen, right? I mean, hydrogen has been around as an idea for many decades already. I mean, I started 11 years ago at BMW working on hydrogen. And then in the beginning, I mean, like in my second year or something, it was completely canceled at BMW, or more or less, not completely, but quite a lot. But I very much believe that in the end it will come and it will be successful. So I think that's the more technical side. But then I think it's the entrepreneurial side as well. Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? And I mean, also I had some experience already in my prior life before Hydrogenious, not in technology, not in hydrogen, but actually when I was a student, I founded a little company together with a friend of mine, which offered some kind of recruiting services to big industrial companies, which actually worked by us offering students to copy for very little price, only like 1 cent per copy. And then on the back of these you had actually the advertisements of big corporate companies announcing like job offerings that they had. So it's of course not the very most sophisticated business concept, but it worked surprisingly well. I mean, we did it in like over 5 years in our university time, had like 50 big customers, had like 10 copy stations all over Germany and so on. So this like ignited in me the wish to be an entrepreneur in the longer term, right? And of course, I also realized that it needs to be something maybe with a bit more technology background and so on. And then when I really worked on hydrogen, my feeling was that this could be something big. Of course, to be honest, I thought sometimes it would go a bit quicker than it did over a long time. But now for the last 2 years, we can really not complain because the whole dynamics and the whole momentum is really huge. And I think for me, it was these two things leading together. I was actually more or less actively looking for having something to base your company on or becoming an entrepreneur with. And then I had the feeling that with hydrogen, which interested me a lot and fascinated me a lot, this could be the thing. But you're absolutely right. It's nothing that like by next year will be completely developed and completely working. This is something which for the next decades will still make a lot of engineers and entrepreneurs and scientists having a lot of work.
Interesting. So that's a great jump from copy machines to hydrogen storage units.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that I would end up like this, but yes, that's how it was.
Okay, so that was Daniel. Adriano, so you are there at the intersection of energy space and agriculture space, both of them quite complex by themselves, and you combine them together. So what is your story? What brought you to this?
Yeah, so I'm an energy engineer by education, and for me, what let's say made me end up in this situation was that I started a technical consulting business during my PhD program, where we were designing steam turbines for a scale up. Let's call it something in between a startup and a sustainable business in the US. And by interacting with these people, I realized that if they were doing something if they were doing that, I didn't see any reason why I couldn't do. Let's say, make more impact than just running a consulting business. And so we decided together with Emiliano, which is the other co-founder of SOLHO and was also the co-founder in the previous technical consulting business, to start something more impactful. And we realized, let's say, back in 2017 that there was a lot of interest and momentum around greenhouse farms and how unsustainable they are from an energy perspective. And so we decided, let's say, to put our studies into practice to see if we can help move the industry towards a more sustainable, let's say, practice. And that's how I ended up working with SOLHO. And I mean, we are we are developing hardware, so it's taking time, much more than what we were planning to to spend on it. But now we are finally seeing the results, and it's definitely exciting with, of course, a lot of ups and downs, as I guess we will have the opportunity to tell a bit more later.
Okay, thank you, Adriano. Actually, this nicely brings us to another question, and that is key moments in your on your path to build a successful startup. So can you think of any moments which were very important for you on your journey to build up BLIXT and Hydrogenious and SOLHO, which make you jump? So Charlotta, do you remember any such moment?
Yeah.
Probably every day, right?
I think this is the typical journey. I don't know if you've seen this graph of the startup journey. You get this moment of initial enthusiasm and everything is impossible. You get so much energy, and then you get the backlash, and then you keep on moving up. And if you're stubborn enough and persistent and patient, you actually should succeed. And I would say for us, it was almost, really, really early on. We got a full-page article in The Economist. So we were just pitching this idea of being able to control electricity in a new software way. And throughout this article, we had reach outs for months from companies all over the world. We thought of buildings and controlling the electricity flow in buildings. But it was even the space agency, it was shipping industry, automotive industry, saying that could we potentially, and then we realized what we are building is almost like, introducing the computer into a mechanical old infrastructure of electricity. And it opened up our visions of what we could do. We could run thousands of applications. It's just, program it and do whatever you wanted to do. So we spent a few months just exploring all those different paths and trying to figure out where do we start. Maybe buildings is not the right choice. Maybe we should go into somewhere else. So we really did this typical customer development journey, talking to all these different stakeholders. And, and then we had to narrow it down because we are a small team with limited funding. So I think for us, it was really the wow moment when we realized what we could do with our technology. And to be completely honest, it's not only because we are at the SET Awards. I'm extremely competitive, which sometimes is good. Sometimes it could be, not so good when you are on bachelor's parties and you're supposed to have fun. But winning the SET Awards was also a big moment for us because it's a big global event. The participants were handpicked, extremely high quality. The jury was high quality. So for me personally, I just loved being at the event, and also being part of the winner team was a great moment, which also opened up a lot of new connections, networks with partners and investors. So those, I think, would be the two great moments. And then it's also, I heard from both Daniel and Adriano that you are working with long-term projects, as do we. It's hardware. You have to iterate, go to certification, all that. And now it feels so nice to know that we have passed at least pre-compliance with this piece, so we can, know it's working and it can be qualified to go to market. So that is also a really, really big wow moment for the team to manage to build this piece together.
Congratulations, Charlotta. Very interesting part with the Economist article. Yeah, that is amazing. Adriano, can you think of any such moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we operate in a super conservative, in a quite conservative market. So our customers are greenhouse manufacturers, which have been building their facilities for 60, 70 years now. Agriculture in general is a rather conservative industry where people relies on the experience of their grandfathers, etc., etc. So for us, our strategy and at the same time a key moment was to get one of the largest player on board. So which was for us the only way to move forward. So basically, one of the key moments which happened during the first, I would say, 8 months from incorporation was that we convinced one of the largest greenhouse manufacturers to that we have something potentially valuable for them, and this allowed us to deploy the first system which we built last year in the south of France, and gave us the momentum and the credibility, especially to go and face other players and our clients around the globe. So this was, I guess, one of the main key moments. And then another one, which is more related to the team, it was also like to find, when we found the right people the right person to support us on the operational activities, because it's often overlooked, but it's super important to find the right team. We were 2 at the beginning, and it took us a lot of effort to find the right person. And when we found that person, that was also another very important moment for us that helped the whole company to move forward and where we are now.
Okay. So partnerships, right? Very crucial for a startup. And there is no doubt that the team is basically the heart and soul of the company. So
yeah,
very understandable. Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, I would actually like to mention like 2 situations. I mean, the first one was definitely, I mean, after this first time on running or working on your pitch, right, and trying to find investors. And I mean, it was more or less a one-man show, if you like. I mean, we have a bit of an untypical combination of founders, because I was the only operational, because the other 3 were professors at the university, of course, still having their main job. And therefore, I mean, like after these 1.5 years, when we really found an investor, had the first funding round, had our own offices outside of the university, because before that I was just sitting there. Like then of course having our own workshop, building like the first systems and running them, and especially having our own team, right? So having more people coming to the team, really working together on that. So that was certainly a very key moment, like seeing how it grows from some very early phase thing with just one person involved to something which is really a team, more people that really push it forward, spend every day there. So that was very good to see. And I think the second one I wanted to mention is also connected to the team. Because I mean, we have grown to something like 95 people today. And what I really like the most about it is really like seeing the whole company and the team develop and being part of that development, right? Because going from 1 to 5, going from 5 to 10, going from 20 to 40 is always a huge difference in terms of how of the culture, of like how the company feels like, right? How people interact, what the self-understanding is, and so on. And seeing that over the various stages is really crazy. And I mean, before that, when you come from a corporate, you think it doesn't matter if it's 5 people or 100, it's still a very small company. But I mean, that's not true at all, right? I mean, every time the whole face of the company changes a lot. And I mean, now you start with one single room and where all the people sit and they communicate all day. But as soon as you have the second room, I mean, you need to establish some ways of communication, because it's not clear that everybody knows everything. And then if you go to 50 and so on, and I think that's not one moment, but that's several moments over the 7 years. We really see what it means, like that the company is growing, team is growing, that it's really a different company than it was a year ago. Of course, still with the same basis, with the same basic understandings and philosophies and so on, but still the company develops a lot every year with all the great people helping, supporting it and working for it.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel, for that. 100 people, that's already a big family to manage. I actually would like to come back and still stay with this question, because you mentioned key moments, but basically positive moments. Are there any moments, like any struggles, anything which actually made you jump forward, but like from the other side, that you needed to go through that hell in order to jump forward?
I would say it happens all the time. It's a constant dance back and forth. One very near-term event was that we were planning to raise a larger funding round in March, April this year, which was not really good timing, obviously. So we had to, it was just like the curtain was pulled down in all the dialogues we have with investors. And also we need to put in mind maybe that our company, since we are more of a long-term project, this shift will not happen over a year or 2 years, and it takes time to develop. Those typical investors that more do hard software and quick journeys are not for us. So we had to sit down and assess and see, well, should we be just long-term patient, or what do we do with this current situation? Because the big funding round was not a good timing with the corona effect and the instability in the market. And we also saw that ideally we would need to take one step further with certification of our product to de-risk everything, to show, yeah, it's working, it's going to be shipped in the market. So we worked really, really hard and been doing both with grants and with other options. So we decided to push for the larger funding round until post-certification. And really good timing was that we got the grant from the Swedish Energy Agency and support from the current shareholders. So that was really a strength. And I couldn't also just developing the piece of hardware. It's a reason why we would be the first one out, because the technical challenges are huge. So, each time, each new iteration step, we have to solve a lot of issues and find components that are not really, easy to source, and they cost a fortune now, but they will be cheaper in the future, etc. So I think, but working with funding is a constant, never-ending process, both good and bad experiences. That's just some of it.
Okay, yeah. I know that. I'm the investor.
Yeah, you need to raise as well.
Daniel, Adriano, any other moment in your life you would like to add to the discussion?
I guess, it's a job where you need to be humble and patient and resilient. It's often the case that it looks like you're closing the deal of your life, and then it doesn't happen. So I guess little by little you learn that you don't have to get too much excited about something that is about to happen, because it can be very much the case that it doesn't happen. And for us, we had we are now also closing a first investment round, and we were supposed to close it last year. For us, it was even longer. It slowed down a bit the developments, but it is something you accept. And if you are really focused on your values and the mission of the company, and you believe that what you're doing means something to you, I guess sooner or later you find your way through it.
Yeah. Thank you, Adriano. So these are the low moments, the hard times as well, which you need to face as founders, and which basically make you progress as well. It's not only the highlights, the shiny days when everything works well. And my question here would be, where do you take your energy from? As whenever I talk to founders and to companies we are considering to invest into, I'm always very humble and very appreciate what they are doing, listening to their stories and all the difficulties they need to get over basically almost every day. And I'm wondering, where do they take the energy from? Is it the woods behind you, or what is it?
Yeah. No, I think this explains a bit. I had my birthday last weekend, and for a long time on my wish list I had a new trekking watch. So I'm actually trying to learn all the new functions, because it seemed to be very complicated. But I just love trekking. So it's the only time of the year, and since we live in Sweden, we just take the night train up north until our country ends, which is far above the polar circle. and you don't have any connectivity, so you cannot. I mean, if I can use network, I use it. It would be even more stressful to try to log out but have access to it. So just being offline for 2 weeks, and you carry all the food you need. We bring the 3 kids, and me and my co-founder, that is also my husband. We bring our tent, the cooking gear, and just each day you walk until your body hurts. I mean, normally you don't use it. I mean, people are lucky if they get 10,000 steps a day. But I love that feeling, just to focus on, nature, working with your body, and speaking to the kids, play card games. For me, that's the best way of energizing or getting energy. On a day-to-day basis, I would say I get a lot of energy working with my co-founder and partner, because I think the journey we started is so, it's been really, in good and bad aspects, a really eventful journey. And I think to be able to share those moments with someone that fully understands is so important. Otherwise, you would come back home and say, well, I had a great day, and yeah, or you had a bad day. But now you can be supportive, because if I'm feeling very low, you would get, yeah, come on now, let's do it. So I think you learn together to be problem solvers of almost impossible situations. And I think that's a big strength. And apart from that, I think it's a big benefit of having the kids, because you are forced to go back, to reality here and now. You cannot, keep on. And I use them a lot for pitch training, because I know if the kids don't get my pitch, I need to change it. So I think family and the mountaineering is really, really nice.
Are they watching now?
Sorry.
If the kids are watching now,
no, I think they're not. I actually, as I said, I told them specifically not to call me, because they would destroy my connection on the iPad. But I should invite them next time.
I think you have very unique model with this husband being on board with you, leading the company. I am not sure this is broadly replicable, but I understand.
No, it's not for anyone. Actually, next week I will come to my son's school and talk about entrepreneurship. So it's in front of all the 9th graders, and I asked him before, do you think it's embarrassing if mom comes and talks about entrepreneurship? And he said, no, of course not. And I thought that was big of him.
Daniel, Adriano.
I mean, I think taking the energy from, of course, in the long term, that's certainly like working on your own behalf, right? I mean, you can have a lot of work in any kind of work or company, doing long hours and whatever. But I mean, for me, at least, it makes a big difference to do this somehow for yourself in the end, right? Like seeing the result. Also, of course, being responsible for the result in the positive and in a negative way, of course, also with some things that don't work out. And I think, of course, every day there's a lot of challenges and problems and some negative stuff as well, and a lot of decisions to take and so on. So certainly, I mean, the energy is coming from having the feeling that it goes into the right direction, that you have an answer which really matters, right? That it is something where you can contribute, not doing this for nothing. And then really also seeing, of course, the success and the result over the time. I mean, of course, in regard to like the not so nice days, I mean, I can fully agree with what Charlotta and Adriano said. I mean, many of them for founders, I think, are somehow connected to funding and investors and funding rounds and so on, right? I mean, not always, but often. And I mean, also here, of course, it was the same situation that, I mean, hydrogen really picked up like 2 years ago a lot. And before that, it was not like nobody was interested in it, but it was at least very difficult, right? Because it was a very long-term thing. And therefore, I mean, we also certainly had our negative experiences and things that didn't work out with funding and partners, which did not get on board where you wanted them to get them, and so on. And I think one key learning, and also I think that's also in regard to this energy thing, not letting you down by the bad things too much, is realizing that you are not in full control, right? Because also if it's about funding, there's so many reasons that impact it in the end, right? You can have a COVID pandemic in the middle of your funding round. And I mean, it's not at all your fault, but it might mean that funding doesn't work. Or I don't know, an investor might step away because, I don't know, company policy has changed or whatever. And I mean, of course, it's not your fault. You have done a lot of good work, and realizing that I mean, you always need to have, of course, several options, because it can always happen that without your fault, some of them go away. I think that's important. I think that's also helping in regard to, like, of course, getting more positive energy from the positive things than getting negative energy from the negative things, right? I mean, that's, if you see the balance, the important thing in the end.
Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. If I can add something, of course, you get energized when things go well in the company. Let's say you see things moving on, and you're reaching the next steps, etc. But for me, in general, the two things I do when things are not going well is doing sports in general, and talking with people that are doing completely different things from what I do, to realize that there are other things because otherwise you get too much focused on the problems you're trying to solve, and you start thinking that the world is all about what you're doing, while in reality there are many more things, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, that actually brings us back to Charlotta's kids, right? The different reality, which makes you understand the whole context and not being overwhelmed with the everyday problems of your business. The time is running so quickly, so maybe my last question would be the important question about what, based on your experience, you think are the key ingredients for a startup to succeed. So I don't know if you can, Daniel, perhaps start. I can't see Charlotta now, but not sure she's connected. So let's start with you, Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, first of all, it is certainly perseverance, right? Because, I mean, we just had it, right? I mean, it's not only going in one direction, it's not only positive. And I think this is also including maybe not letting yourself down if your business idea or your concept completely fails, right? I mean, that's something we have not talked about yet. I mean, also, I mean, being an entrepreneur can mean that you go a few months or years into one direction and realize that it's not ending up, right? And but that must also not mean that it's all a big catastrophe and that was it with your successful professional life and so on. No, not at all, right? I mean, I think you have got a lot of experience, which is really valuable, and then doing something new can also be a successful thing to do, right? So I think it's perseverance, and that's certainly something that a lot of successful founders, I think, somehow have shown in their life. That's the one big thing, and then I think the other thing is something which is not at all surprising, I think, which is the team in the end, right? Because I mean, of course, you always often have a founder or somebody in front who's pushing it, but in the end, I mean, it is all about who you have as a team. And I'm not only talking about the founders, the founder team, which is of course very relevant in an early phase company, right? When you're trying to attract the first seed funding or Series A, okay, of course the founder team is most important. It's also then of course all the employees that you have, also of course how you can motivate them, how you can let them participate in the success, right? And having shares or whatever and so on. But I think then it's also really about what kind of partnerships you have with other companies, with like in the value chain and so on, because I mean, especially also in our field where it's always about really long-term things, large-scale investments and so on. I mean, you cannot do this on your own, especially not as a young company, right? And therefore, having the right partners, having the right people around you, having the right investors, the right shareholders, and that's all that I would like to call the right team, is certainly one of the key success factors in the end.
Yeah, very true, Daniel. Adriano, do you have?
Absolutely, I agree with what Daniel said. Maybe another thing is that at the end, as the whole team, let's say the whole management team has to be ready to accept that sometimes they're wrong, and that let's say be humble and ready to change your plans and your strategy, because especially at the beginning, because of most of the time your assumptions are wrong. So you need to have a certain mindset, which is something you can also build with experience, but that say the ability and the capability to adapt to what happens around you and to the validations you make during the journey. This is fundamental, because if you stick to your idea and you think that that's the best thing ever, it's easy. It's an easy call to say that you will probably it won't go very far. Let's say, at least most of the time, because most of the time you're wrong. I guess.
I don't want to hear this.
No, but I mean, it's what happens. It's a lot. There is a lot. I mean, it's a lot of, especially. I mean, at the end, we are, especially for us, we are a small startup. We keep validating things, and you need to be, let's say, humble enough to realize that it's an iterative process. It's not that you wake up a morning and you say, "Oh, this is a brilliant idea. I will save the world." It doesn't work like this. So yeah.
Okay. Charlotta?
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. And for me, I think it's three things. Definitely the team. And for me, I think the team dynamics is the most important. So it's not all coming from the same mindset and education or background experience. So having a team that complement each other, but at the same time showing full respect. Because I mean, we normally never share exactly the same opinions, but together I think we are a stronger team because we think differently. So that is super important. I think the passion is also extremely important, because without the passion for what you're doing and the belief, you cannot be able to convince anyone else to invest or form partnerships, and you will not get the energy throughout this journey to succeed. Because it's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of risk taking. I mean, everything that goes with being an entrepreneur, you need to have the passion and conviction of this is going to be a great startup. Especially also when you invest everything you have, and you need to make it a big success. And then thirdly, it would be the execution. At BLIXT, we have now filed 25 patent applications with 9 patent families, but that would be practically useless unless we have a plan for execution and bringing that to the market. And the natural way to do it, and that's also when it comes to being, normally I think with female founders are a bit too shy and overdo things before, I mean, they need to be perfect before you talk about it or show it to someone. But a part of the execution journey is just to try out early on, see if you can get the traction before you build anything, and so on and so forth. So I think the whole execution journey, and that should change along the route as you learn. So you adapt and you learn and you change your strategy according to the feedback from the partners. And again, especially working with both hardware and extremely conservative industry like utilities, OEMs, we need to be very agile and listen to them. At the same time, keeping what makes us special and unique is to think outside the box. So all those three, I think, is a good starting point for being successful.
Thank you, Charlotta. I'm afraid you're coming to the end. I would like to ask you for a message which you can share with the audience. You can target it to investors, to corporates, to startups. Something you believe is key for a startup to succeed. So I will let you think about that. And meanwhile, I will quickly wrap up our chat today. The question for the chat was what it is that makes one win, that makes one succeed. We have heard here lots of interesting stories about how team is important, about how investors are important. First of all, for sure, how founders are important. It is what matters, the values, the persistence, but as well being humble. We heard many times here that it is about all the people who are around the company supporting it from other sides. We can imagine as well that it is not only about the soft stuff. There are as well some things about technology, about the business model, about the positioning within the value chain, and so on. So basically, the answer is quite complex. I would call the answer a constellation of success. This is what we at Inven Capital use very often to make us visualize what it is actually that makes a startup successful. It is the constellation of success, that all these ingredients more or less are there, and the startup is in a great position to leap forward and make it happen, to make the dreams happen of the founders. Charlotta, Adriano, Daniel, what is your message to the audience?
Should I start?
Sure, please.
Well, no, I would address all the startups that, or all the, let's say, the founders, co-founders, or employees of the startups that are watching us. It's already great that you made it here. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep believing that you can actually change the world for the better, and not let your, let's say, dream or aspirations be stopped by some old corporate guy that says that your idea will never become true.
A bit controversial. Thank you, Adriano. Daniel, Charlotta, who next? Charlotta.
Actually, since the topic was also a winner, I think it's important to, I think no one is ever just pure luck a winner. I think it's also keep on doing the hard work, because you can always increase the likelihood of having luck. So I think we worked a lot with that to increase our likelihood of being lucky, both when it comes to partnerships and with all other challenges that we have going forward. And so just a message to the entrepreneurs, I think everyone is just amazing that takes on the big risk and the challenge of that journey. So keep on doing that. It's really needed. And if you are considering applying for the SET Awards, I would also encourage you, because it's absolutely the top event I attended and great organizers. For me personally, if it's anyone else that is not startup out in the audience, we are looking both for more partnerships, specifically pilot partnerships and OEM strategic partnerships. And also, as always, funding is a topic. So if you are an investor, maybe I can have a chat with you, Petra. We are looking for that as well, going forward, post-certification, probably before the summer next year.
Okay, thank you, Charlotta and Daniel.
Yeah, so that was already very, very wise and very nice words from Charlotta and Adriano. But let me maybe add one thing to the startups. I think it's what I mentioned before. I mean, it's not only founding because you see this very big potential success. I think what many people don't realize is that the whole process, right, gives so much experience that you can never get in a different position in a corporate or wherever, right? And therefore, I think if you are somebody who believes that being an entrepreneur would be something for you, I would not set the hurdle too high in terms of I need the best and perfect and business model of the world before I start something. I mean, of course, you should think it through and not do like quick overreactions and quitting your job and whatever. But I mean, just starting with something and then developing it from there, maybe changing direction a little bit, pivoting and learning a lot in that process is something I think which works also really well. Because being an entrepreneur is not about having this one single idea that wins it all, but about how you create something new, right? And therefore, I would not set the hurdle too high. Maybe you can start with something and work your way through, and maybe sometime later you come up with a great idea, and that will be very successful.
Okay, and that was the 3 messages from our SET Award winners, Charlotta, Adriano, and Daniel. Thank you all for sharing your stories with us today. Thank you all for being here today with us, and enjoy the rest of SET Festival.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye.